Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 117 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 43 of A Clash of Kings. That's Jon 5.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter. We're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and places in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. I'm oddly awake for the time of morning.
Yes, you're going to say it the American way, that we've had daylight savings.
Yes.
But,
or we fell back, as we say.
Yes, you see, in order to do that, you have to call autumn fall.
Oh, right. So you can't autumn American back. Thing. Very well.
Yes, exactly. That doesn't make a lot of sense to anyone, really. Yeah, and actually, it's weird because obviously I talked to Europe quite a lot, and they went a week earlier. So the time difference has been out of whack for a week.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
But we're
with
back on the same schedule now.
The European writers on my team. I did not.
Yeah, you've been bothering them in the middle of the night all week. You didn't know it.
You know how hard I push them. So, yeah, when you proposed this early morning time, I thought, oh boy, I hope I'm up and awake, or else I'm going to be sleepwalking through this. But I've been up for several hours now.
I factored that in.
Yes,
I knew it was coming. What have I got for you?
What have you got for me? How are you?
I'm good.
You got your family call coming up in a little bit here.
I'm going to talk to the family. I'm excited by the fact that we've got merchandise. I know we're going to talk about that later, but that's really exciting to me that we've got a merch shop.
It is. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's barely known, and already we're getting to the point where we're almost covering our costs.
Right.
We might start to break even at some point on this whole shebang.
As of this moment, the episode where we announce the merch shop has not even released yet, so
I know.
That's tomorrow.
Merch just flying out the doors without anyone knowing about it.
Just in time for the holidays. Yeah.
I was telling people on the Discord server that I wasn't really looking forward to this chapter, but then you sort of reassured me that it was not such a long one.
Right. It's like 7 pages.
I'm disenchanted with Jon generally.
You know,
but I tell you, well, one thing I will tell you, and I'll get to this when I get to the TV thing. This particular chapter creates a reason for all this,
right,
that doesn't exist in the TV show, which I because I read the books before I watched the TV show. My memory of the books is the TV show.
Right, sure, yeah.
So rereading them, I'm sort of like, oh, I'd forgotten about this, and of course the TV show has to cut some corners, understandably.
Sure. But
this is an important corner for Jon's story arc, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It gives it purpose.
Yeah.
Which is a complaint that a lot of the folks on the Ranging have. What is the purpose?
Right. Well, they should be reading the book, not watching the TV show, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, Molly just finished her play last night. What
was the play again?
It was, And Then There Were None, which is an Agatha Christie story set in 1939. So she played a middle-aged spinster, and she played it quite well. In fact, she comes out. So yesterday, Ethan came to the show. Stacy and I have been to all the shows, but Ethan was only coming to one. So he came to last night's show. And
have you figured out who's done it by now?
I have. She comes out, like she makes her appearance on stage, and she does her conversations and everything, and then she leaves off stage to go to her room because they're at this like bed and breakfast type thing. And I said to Ethan, I was like, "What'd you think?" And he's like, "When's Molly gonna come on?" That was her.
She's a chameleon.
The reason is because she's dressed with like this gray wig. She has a like gray hair wig and this old lady clothes, and he had no idea that was his sister on stage.
Her own brother doesn't recognize her.
In fact, she looks on stage a lot like my paternal grandmother. Like, when I first saw her, I was like, wow, that looks like my grandmother.
That's weird, but not entirely surprising.
I guess so, yeah. Anyway, it was...
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it was quite...
She should be really proud of that, you know?
Yeah. Stacy's mom was sitting on the other side of Stacy. It went me, Ethan, Stacy, her mom, and then Stacy's cousin and Stacy's aunt. There was a whole bunch of us there last night. And Stacy's mom sitting on the other side of her and said the same thing, like a few minutes later, like, when's Molly going to make her appearance? Oh, she's like, that was her. So
she should come on and like lift her wig. It's me, everybody.
Props to the wardrobe and makeup staff.
No, that's the acting.
Yes.
That's the acting.
That's what it is. Anyway.
All right, let's get down to business. How did we leave Jon Snow? So last we saw of Jon, he and the rest of the Great Ranging arrived at the Fist of the First Men. That night, Ghost led Jon to a buried cache of dragonglass and an old war horn wrapped in the cloak of a brother of the Night's Watch. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
That does sum up that chapter. It was basically 2 sentences
long. Yeah. that doesn't sum it up. That was the chapter. I just reread it.
All right. So Jon is awoken by a horn blast from a sentry. Possibly. Fear grips the men of the Night's Watch collective hearts momentarily as they wait to hear if a second blast will follow. None does, so instead a collective sigh goes out. Seems their brothers from the Shadow Tower have finally arrived, and not a moment too soon. Lord Commander Mormont pokes his head out of his tent and tells Jon he'll see Qhorin Halfhand at once.
The Shadow Tower men are late with their arrival, and opinions on what to do have been in strong supply around the Fist of the First Men. Some believe it's time to head back to Castle Black, Simon and Mackelly amongst them. Others felt that they should have made their way to the Shadow Tower to look for Qhorin Halfhand and the rest of the Shadow Tower men. While another opinion is that they should push on into the Frostfangs and do battle with Mance Rayder's force, without the men from the Shadow Tower.
As the arriving men make their way to the summit of the Fist of the First Men, Jon notices that his Shadow Tower brothers are looking worse for the wear. Some appear to be injured, and many are riding two to a horse. He identifies Qhorin Halfhand immediately, and it's not just the hand that gives him away. The feeling is mutual as the Halfhand identifies Jon while swinging out of his saddle.
Seems Jon has his father's look, as we already knew, and the Halfhand knew both Eddard and his own father, Rickard. The Halfhand is curious about the direwolf that is said to run with Jon. Jon says that Ghost is off hunting, but will be back by dawn. The pair meet Lord Commander Mormont, and Qhorin relays the news regarding why they were late. Seems they'd had a run-in with Alfin Crowkiller and his men. Alfin is a wildling raider known for his bloody ways with Rangers of the Night's Watch. Alfin was killed, along with many of his men, but a few of them might have escaped to report back to Mance Rayder. Unfortunately, 4 brothers were killed and a dozen are injured.
Qhorin and his men also managed to take a wildling hostage. Well, one that survived for a while, anyway. The hostage told them that Mance has an army larger than the Night's Watch could have imagined, that includes wargs and mammoths. However, these revelations were given under much duress, so their accuracy is questionable. Jon leaves the men to help Dolorous Ed prepare food for them. While listening to Ed's usual dolorous musings, Jon's mind drifts to his hope that the arrival of the Shadow Tower men would lift the spirits of the rest of the men.
Morale has been low. Just last night, Jon overheard Chet, Locke, the sister man, and a handful of others talking about not going into the Frostfangs after Mance's army and not giving the Lord Commander a choice about it. Rather than report it, Jon chalked it up to nothing more than empty talk. While Ed cooks, Jon takes out his new dragonglass dagger. He's taken one of the blades from the cache Ghost showed him and fashioned a rough handle to it. He made one for the Lord Commander as well. He gave Sam the war horn, which turned out to be cracked and broken, along with a spearhead and a bunch of arrowheads. He passed the rest out to his other friends as tokens of luck.
Jon brings the food to the Lord Commander and the Halfhand. He then sits to listen to their conversation. Mormont wants to notify the king, well, all of the kings, about the wildling army. Any king that will listen and help will do. Qhorin thinks the Starks rallying the north is the smarter bet. The Lord Commander also considers manning a few of the abandoned castles along the wall to keep an eye on the wildling activity. He figures they'll try to go under, as going over the wall would be too difficult. Qhorin says, A breach is more likely.
This catches Mormont by surprise. How's that even possible? It'd take 100 men a year to cut through the wall. Qhorin thinks that's why Mance has gathered in the Frostfangs. They're searching for something magical that'll help them get through it. Unfortunately, their captive died before he could shed any light on that subject. Qhorin says that the only way to know for sure is to send 3 15-man scouting parties into the Frostfangs, one into each of the passes in and out of the mountains.
The Halfhand's thought is that someone's coming out of those mountains, one way or the other. If it's Mance, he'll have to fight Mormont and the rest of the brothers before he can get to the wall. That will give the brothers south of the wall time to prepare for what's coming. Mormont isn't thrilled about the idea, but he concedes to it. He tells Qhorin to choose his men. His first pick is Jon.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm glad Qhorin Halfhand's here. He makes things a bit more interesting.
Sure. Yeah, seems like a very interesting guy.
Yep. So the initial horn blast, although this is going to be my chief pedantry of the chapter, the initial horn blast does get the chapter off to a rousing start, because it is sort of dramatic moment. Like, one blast means members of the Night's Watch are coming, 2 blasts means wildlings. So
right.
As you wait after that first blast, the difference is pretty night and day between those two things.
Yes, that is. And 3 blasts means others. So
right.
If it got to 2 blasts, then you'd have to wait even with more on pins and needles.
You hope it stops at 1, you really hope it stops at
right.
2.
In fact, 2
maybe,
long blasts followed by a short one is a call to mount your horses.
Oh, interesting. I did not know you had the whole horn blast semaphore down.
Those are all the way. If there's more than that, I don't know them. Those are the 4 that I'm aware of.
I do think that that's sort of like, I mean, you got to imagine that some of these members of the Night's Watch aren't in the best of health. It must be dangerous to have this system whereby news that the Night's Watch are arriving is halfway to news that you're under attack.
It is.
Perhaps they should have like a sort of like a trilling flute for the wildlings.
Yes, different sounds. and I'm wondering, the 2 long blasts followed by a short one, which is the call to horses versus the others, is very subtle.
Well, here's my argument. If I hear 3 blasts, I'm getting on my horse anyway. Was that long or short? I don't care.
I'm out of here. See you on the south side of the wall, suckers.
Yeah. See if my horse can jump that thing.
Oh.
So the Lord Commander's lieutenant's opinions vary as they've been waiting for the Shadow Tower men for an increasingly long period of time. They've started to have sort of opinions on what they ought to do. Of course, the only person whose opinion actually mattered was Lord Commander Mormont, and he wanted to wait a bit longer to see if Qhorin turned up.
Right.
Which, lo and behold, he did. But in the meantime, Sir Otin Withers, who John's talked to him a few times. He's an old knight. He's been commanding the rear guard on this ranging. Yeah, he thinks. We're Team Otin Withers. They should go back to Castle Black as soon as possible and prepare for the attack that's coming.
Yeah, there's definitely some common sense to that. I mean, you could chalk this up to a team building exercise. You've discovered significant amounts of information on this rating. You learned that Mance Rayder is amassing the individual communities of wildlings into a single force in the Frostfangs. You now know this. You've also, from that, surmised that there's going to be an attack on the wall to get to the southern side of the wall. And that's been proved right by the info you've gotten from Qhorin Halfhand. So
Right. And you've discovered that it's very cold north of the wall.
True.
and Craster isn't a very nice guy. I mean, really, that's a ton of useful information.
Right.
Now, time to get back to the war.
Yes. But then Sir Malador Locke, he commands the baggage train. So, if he decides to turn back, then you're really in trouble. He suggests that they head toward the Shadow Tower and look for the Shadow Tower men because they're so late in arrival. Maybe they need help somewhere, or there's a situation. Of course, this plan has been made moot by their arrival. There's no need to go looking for them.
But actually, you could have combined that with what Artin Withers was suggesting. Go back to Castle Black via the Shadow Tower.
Sure.
See if anyone was there. Qhorin Smallwood, who is the acting First Ranger. I always think of The Office whenever I think of Qhorin Smallwood. He claims he's First Ranger, right. And then someone interjects acting.
Assistant to the First Ranger.
And you remember that Qhorin Smallwood wanted command of this whole ranging. He thought that he should be in charge of this and thought Mormont should stay home. But Mormont didn't really trust him as First Ranger.
Yeah, he threw him out of his chambers.
Right.
And we also know that Qhorin Smallwood is a crony of Sir Alistair Thorne and is not a fan of Jon and Sam, which doesn't factor into his decisions here, but just some coloring of Qhorin Smallwood.
Yes. It's hard to be both a crony of Thorne and a friend of Jon and Sam, I would say.
It would be difficult.
Exclusive. Yes. Not a lot of overlap between those two sets.
You have conflict of interest there.
So again, I think Qhorin Smallwood wants to sort of prove himself, as acting First Commander, First Ranger.
Right.
So he wants to take a smaller group off into the Frostfangs to seek out Mance Rayder.
Yeah, well, basically he wants to not bother to wait for the Shadow Tower men and just ride in force on the Mance Raiders group up there.
And of course, I mean, his argument is that no matter how big the force is, it's elderly, women, children, there's not going to be that many. He describes it as a wolf amongst sheep. Doesn't matter what the numbers are,
right.
You're going to win. But there's clearly some wildlings who know what they're doing. And Mance Rayder is clearly bringing a bit of discipline and structure to what they're doing as well. So
right.
Might be a suicide mission, that one.
And you haven't done any scouting, so you don't know their location or the conditions of where they are. His line is, we'll sweep over them and send them howling back to their hovels. But if they're up in the Frostfangs, sweeping over them might not really be an option if they're in a location that doesn't allow for sweeping. It's a very mountainous region. There might not be a situation where you can sweep in on them. And also, they're elevated, so you would imagine Mance Rayder has some scouts out there.
Right, exactly. This is my point. He's bringing discipline.
Yes,
I mean,
right.
They would have a defensive structure set up against possible incursion from the Night's Watch.
And you have to wonder if horses can even climb into the Frostfangs to where they are. If they're at some very elevated point, you might not even be able to be on horseback.
You could imagine these scouts see them coming from 3 days away because they're trudging slowly. You know what? We don't have any defenses, but I think we've got time to build some.
And then we get this news from Qhorin Halfhand, from the captive that they took, that there's wargs and mammoths and more strength than the Night's Watch could have dreamed, which is exactly why you don't just rush headlong into this battle, because you don't know what force you're up against yet. Yeah.
And well, the news comes from this hostage who was being, prodded while he was dying. So not entirely trustworthy. It does fit with what they've been learning on this ranging from Craster, for instance, that all the wildlings were being drawn together. Now, do they have any clue how many wildlings there are? No, not really, but They know it's going to be in the thousands. They know it's not going to be in the hundreds, so it's going to be a large group.
Yes, right. Yeah, and of course he is being tortured to get this information.
Right.
And so possibly he's either over-exaggerating what they have just to try and... Assuming I'm going to die here, I'm going to scare these guys and tell them that they've got,
Yeah, or go the other way. I mean, say, oh, you know what, it's pitiful. He's tried to draw them all together, but it's all the crippled and the lame. You could take it easily. Lure them to their death,
That would be another option, yeah. But
the poor guy was dying, so
right.
Let's give him a pass for not thinking tactically at this point.
Yeah. But so, okay, the Night's Watch are supposed to be the good guys in this part of the story here. Are we okay with them using torture to get info from wildlings? I mean, it's already hard to argue why they forced these people to live outside the wall in the first place. It's, I don't know, it's certainly... It colors them a bit that they, that they're okay with torturing people to get info. It's a decision.
I mean, we don't know what happened. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but we don't know what happened. He might have had a mortal wound that was definitely going to kill him, and they might have just said, hey, we'll ease your passing if you cough up a bit of information, kind of thing.
Possibly,
but
although
that's not what it sounded
says he might have been questioned too sharply and died before we could get all the info we needed out of him. But we don't. He did say they had more than one hostage, and this was the only one that didn't die of their wounds. So don't know how badly he was already injured. But it's just kind of surprising from the good guys to be torturing people for information. But I guess good guys depends on your perspective.
Yeah. So when the horn sounds, Sam asks if it's Benjen returning, which actually makes a certain amount of sense. Although I would imagine Sam would be clued in enough to know that they were expecting Qhorin Halfhand's men to arrive, but
yeah,
that would have been a possibility, and I'm surprised it didn't just flicker in Jon's heart as well that it might be.
I was kind of too, and who else didn't even consider it was Mormont when he poked his head out and said, "Was that one blast?" And Jon said, "Yeah," and he said, "It's the Halfhand." I'll see him at once. He didn't even think, is it the Halfhand or could it be Benjen Stark?
Maybe that goes to the character of the three people we just talked about. Sam is eternal optimist and sort of like, right. Whereas Mormont and Jon are both kind of realistic, and they've both kind of abandoned Benjen. They both not abandoned him, but they think he's gone. They're not expecting him back anytime soon.
Yeah, that's true, and that's what Jon thinks in his head, is it's getting harder each day to have hope that his uncle will return to them.
How did Qhorin Halfhand get his name?
Well, it's an interesting story about the origin of the Halfhand's nickname. So Jon recognizes him instantly, and it's not just the Halfhand that tips him off. And so what happened is that he caught a wildling's axe that was aimed for his skull, and when he did so, it sheared off all but the forefinger and thumb of his right hand. So then he took that.
That must have hurt.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Probably the adrenaline was flowing at that point. It didn't quite feel it yet. Then he took that now maimed hand and shoved his bloody fist into the wildling's face, and the spurting blood blinded his foe, and then he killed him. So no wonder he's half a legend. If he'd lost both hands, he might be a full legend.
Well, true, yes. So Qhorin inquired about Jon's direwolf, because as we said, Qhorin recognized Jon immediately, and it was interesting that the news of that had reached him. So right. That kind of like, Jon himself is partly legendary now in the Night's Watch.
Absolutely, yeah.
Two
legendary
his reputation
figures
precedes him.
Yeah. Because you can imagine. I mean, you think of all the stories we've been hearing about Robb in the Riverlands, how he's a warg and how he's got pack of wolves and all this, and you can imagine that stories of Jon Snow, the bastard son of Eddard Stark, has a direwolf that hunts with him. That you can imagine that actually just being a legend, and really he just has like a direwolf shield or something like that. So
that's a good point. Yes, and within the Night's Watch, you got to imagine it doesn't take that much because there's not that much going on.
Right? Yeah.
That guy added some salt to the stew. He's a legend. It was really quite good. So Qhorin tells Lord Commander Mormont that the delay in his arrival was due to them meeting this Alfin Crow Killer and his men scouting the wall.
That's good news.
Well, it's not good news that they're scouting the wall. Because
sorry, I thought you said he killed him. Yes, it's good news that he killed Alfin Crow Killer.
What side are you on?
It's not good news that he has that Mance Rayder has sent men to scout the wall. Not so much, and not good news that they ran into them. But he did kill Alfin Crow Killer, and he's one of the ones. So Jarman Buckwell was debating with Qhorin Smallwood at the beginning of the chapter when Qhorin Smallwood said, this is nothing but sheep up there. 20,000 to 1 doesn't matter. We'll cut right through them. And Jarman Buckwell says, well, there's some goats and even some lions up there possibly. And he mentions some of the more notorious wildlings. And one of the ones he mentions is Alfin Crow Killer.
Yeah.
So,
But clearly Mance Rayder is actively probing the wall for places to attack. But he must already know. I mean, he knows which castles are occupied and which are abandoned.
Right.
So he knows where the most vulnerable points are.
And the reason he knows that is because, in case anyone has forgotten, Mance Rayder is a former brother of the Night's Watch who, as they say, flew down off the wall.
Some of Alfin Crow killed. Some of his men escaped, so by now Mance Rayder probably knows that the Night's Watch is out in force, which might make him hunker down a bit more in the Frostfangs and not come down unless he wants to engage with them, which actually strategically might not be a bad idea because, again, they're not protected by the 700-foot wall.
That's that. What else might catch Mance Rayder's attention is sitting on the Fist of the First Men with blazes going every night. That might tip him off as well. What is all that light down there on the top of the Fist of the First Men?
So Jon reminisces about the sort of mutinous discussion he heard the previous night between Chet and Lark and some others talking disparagingly about the ranging. We would have been in this group, Mackelly, you and I.
We might have been, yeah.
Jon didn't hear it all because, remember, Chet is now working the kennel, so he's in charge of the dogs, and one of the dogs sort of got wind of Jon and started to growl and bark, so Jon had to bid a hasty retreat. But they said, it's an old man's folly, this ranging. We'll find nothing but our graves in these mountains. And then Chet was heard to say, I'm not going there, I promise you. Someone replied, the old bear's not likely to give you a choice. And Chet said, might be we won't give him one. Which, I mean, I can totally understand why Jon hasn't reported this. It's the kind of thing that people will say about their superior officers,
Yeah.
It could all be bluster,
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree, absolutely. It is, people just could very, very well just be people blowing off steam. Because, I mean, they've been roaming the wilderness with probably from the just the low-level grunts perspective, no clear objective, not doing really anything useful, exposed to danger on the daily, and no clue when the mission will be deemed a success and called to an end. They're just kind of roaming around the woods, and now they're sitting on top of this hill for days on end. So you could definitely understand why they would be frustrated.
Yeah.
But Jon is Jon is hopeful that the arrival of the Shadow Tower men will lift the spirits of the men from Castle Black. But I'm thinking they probably are having similar gripes and they're injured.
Right.
So,
but actually, no. I would think they would have less similar gripes because at least they just engaged with a dangerous wildling group.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
They would feel like, whoa, I'm glad we came out here. That guy was going to find the weak spot in the wall, and we were going to be invaded.
That's a good point.
And now we've killed him.
Yeah. But on the other hand, it is kind of important information for Mormont to know. if there's such mutinous talk, just because they're very exposed out here, and that if that kind of talk continues to grow and spread, it could become dangerous.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Yeah. So it's a tough call. But I do understand why he hasn't said anything about it. I would certainly keep my ears open, though.
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly longing for home and scared, and it's not unnatural for these, especially among friends, to gripe like that. Right. I mean, imagine what your employees say about you when they get together.
Well, I tell you what they say about me. They say amazing things about me.
I'm sure.
I had a guy retire just recently, and in my last chat with him, I said, "You can be honest now." I said, "It can't hurt you now." And he said, "I really like you as a manager." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Well, that's it's because you haven't left them sitting on a hill, a frozen hill, for days on end.
That's right. The most important thing about being a manager is to not take people up onto a frozen hill.
Right. You don't do that, you're already 50% of the way there.
Exactly. So Jon brings Qhorin and Mormont breakfast, and Qhorin is telling Mormont of the intel he learned from the captive. Mormont wants to warn Castle Black and the kings of the realm. Qhorin thinks that informing the kings is a wasted effort because they're all too busy trying to claim the throne.
Right.
He thinks it's better to get the Starks to raise the North. He's right and wrong.
He is, yes.
The North, generally speaking, is a better bet than the rest of the realm in terms of raising help for the Night's Watch. However, the North is denuded. There is nobody left to help there.
I was thinking about who, if they send a letter to Bran at Winterfell, who they could raise. My list so far goes Hodor, Alebelly, Poxy Tim. Then it really starts to fall off there.
Rickon and Shaggy Dog.
Yes, I forgot Rickon and Shaggy. Of course, I forgot Rickon and Shaggy Dog.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. So I mean, they are right that all of these kings and pretenders, their duty is to protect the realm, but typically the aristocracy care about themselves more than the realm. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it. The North is obviously vulnerable right now to a wildling invasion because of the war. Everyone's in the Riverlands of the West, but if you think about it from a realm-wide level, the realm's not going to be affected by a few, even 10, 20,000 wildlings invading the overall realm. Is not really going to make that much of an impact.
Yeah.
Realm-wide
It's actually, for all the kings who aren't Robb Stark, it's actually good news because it very much distracts Robb Stark.
Right.
Because even if it's like 250,000, I mean, they just invade the North. They're not going to keep going south. They're going to stop when they find a plot of land that they can call their own, You
don't imagine that the folks in, the Reach or the Stormlands will be like, oh no, we must go help the Night's Watch because there's some wildlings coming across. It's not the original intent of the Night's Watch in the Wall was not to keep these random bands of wildlings from coming in to the realm. It's to protect from the others, from the supernatural creatures on the other side of the wall.
But that's your problem, you see. They have been, if they even exist, they've been quiescent for 1,000 years, and now they're known as Grumpkins and Snarks.
Exactly.
So nobody in the Reach is going to waste a single man helping to protect the wall from the possible invasion of some people who are just like the people on the other side of the wall from interfering with the North. No one from the Reach is going to send anyone.
Yeah. I was thinking...
Not while the realm's at war.
No, absolutely.
If the realm was in complete peace, sure, send 100 men,
Right. If it was at peace, Eddard Stark sitting in Winterfell, I'm sure he would rally whatever northern troops he could
And he would get men from all over the realm because nobody would want to be the person who didn't send anyone when there was a serious threat. Yeah.
Right.
So they would all send a token force, and they'd get enough men to actually help.
Right.
But no one's going to do it now.
Which is what Mormont thinks might be happening with Sir Alistair Thorne. So Mormont wants to garrison some more of the castles, because right now there's only the 3 castles that have any men at them. And he thinks that Alistair Thorne might be bringing fresh levies from King's Landing. Now, Thorne's primary mission when he was sent to King's Landing was to take that animated hand, show it to King and Council, prove that the Night's Watch needs reinforcements because there's others stirring, and bring back possibly as much as an army, or at least some actual soldiers, a fighting force. I don't think that's what went down, though. We were there that chapter when he wanted to show the hand to Tyrion, but unfortunately the hand had decayed because Tyrion left him sitting in a old dingy room for so long.
Yeah. And then he is getting Janis Slint, but if Janis Slint doesn't get thrown overboard on the way north, yes. That is. So
the Night's Watch is in bad shape if their hopes lie with Janis Slint.
Mormont doesn't think of Qhorin, doesn't mention Qhorin at this point, but that's because Yoren's just bringing the usual dregs. They're not going to make any difference. He's banking his hopes on Thorne bringing, like you said, actual soldiers to the
right.
war.
He's going to be disappointed there as well. But it made me think about Qhorin. I guess the Night's Watch would have no idea what had happened to Qhorin. They might never, unless someone who was there at that holdfast ends up at the Night's Watch. They may never know what happened to Qhorin.
Yeah.
But then in very Hal Mullen-like fashion, Lord Commander Mormont says to Qhorin Halfhand, "The wall itself is a formidable obstacle."
Which is good that he occasionally remembers that, because he seems to forget it.
Qhorin, the Halfhand should have said, "Yeah, I know. Why are we on this side of it?"
I wonder if our merch, we should have a series of Hal Mullen sort of things.
Yes, that would be fun.
This is a t-shirt, Hal Mullen.
That's a good idea. Write that down.
They reckon that since the villages that they found have been completely empty of men, women and children and animals, the plan is to evacuate them all. So how would they do that? They need to build a stair or a ramp, but that just feels like...
What? When he said that, I was like...
building. But if you've got 10,000 men,
But that's... Yes, but that's a 700-foot ramp and or... Do you imagine how far back you'd have to start to get a 700-foot ramp that wouldn't be too steep to...
But are they actually thinking about cutting the ramp into the face, like a sort of switchback?
Oh, switchbacking. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Gosh,
but it's a huge project. But if you've got thousands of men, it is doable.
Right. Yeah, it is doable, but the amount of time it would take.
Yeah.
So Mormont thinks, well, then that seems very challenging. So more than like they'll try and go beneath through one of the gates,
which Mance Rayder would have knowledge of. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But when I was reading this part, I just kept thinking to myself, Mormont saw the dead rise with his own eyes.
Yes.
He watched Othar rise, and so he knows there are others stirring north of the wall.
Yes.
So why does he want so badly to stop these men, women, and children from finding safety? He's basically, on one hand, he's condemning them to a fate with out there with others and White Walkers. Yes. On the other hand, they're just adding to the mass, adding to the army of these others and White Walkers if he leaves them out there.
Right. That feels like the bigger danger, because you could think of this as a simple sort of two choices. One choice is you allow, let's say, 200,000, because we have no idea how many it is. Let's say 50,000. 50,000 people to cross the wall and live in peace on the safe side of the wall for the winter, and then with the promise that they go back after when the winter ends. Or you burgeon the forces of evil on the north side of the wall by 50,000 because you condemn them to death, you know?
Yeah, I get that they don't acknowledge a king, and that's a problem. I get that they don't have this, they don't live by the same rules that those south of the wall live by. But that doesn't feel like it should be a complete barrier to trying to find a workable situation. Maybe meet with Mance, discuss what Mance has in mind, and possibly see if you can come to some sort of agreement. There's plenty of no, like you said, we don't know how many there are, but how many wildlings there are. But we know that there's 16 castles that are currently sitting empty along the wall, and they've got a lot of territory south of the wall that's dedicated to the Night's Watch that they probably don't have the manpower.
Queen's gift.
Yes. They don't have the people to properly utilize. So seems like something could be worked out.
You mean actually invite them over to man the wall?
The Night's Watch is a very dire short supply of warm bodies. There are going to be a lot more cold bodies north of the wall.
I see what you did there.
So I don't know. I guess it.
No, yeah, but the one thing is, I will say that the end of this chapter justifies all of this nonsense for me, because I'm with you 100% to this point. It's like, why are you trying to stop innocent people, well, you know, relatively innocent people, from getting to safety? But there's this thing: if Mance Rayder is finding some magical way to bring down the wall,
yes,
then that's the real danger. Because then, but then the flip side of that is Mance Rayder. Let's assume Mance Rayder is not a lunatic or evil or anything. He knows, and he's gathering the people of the wildlings together because of the others, right? I mean, that's one of the things we think is happening. I mean, we're just projecting because we've never met him.
Right.
But
it's certainly the timing fits.
Right. They're clustering together because the others have risen and there's real danger. Would he, as someone from south of the wall, actually want to destroy the wall at this moment in time, creating the gap through which the others could come? The wall was created to keep those others out, and he's going to bring it down at this moment?
Yeah, that's a solid point. And as I think about it, we know a little bit of the mindset of the wildlings from Osha. She has said to Bran multiple times, your brother's marching the wrong way. There's there are magical things like others on the other side of the wall that are stirring, and he's marching in the wrong direction. So we do get an idea that very well may be the reason why they're doing these things right now.
Osha is just a wildling, and she knows the danger. Mance Rayder must be acutely aware of this danger.
Yes.
So then, but if this rumor that he's gathering something magical to bring down the wall is true, then they do need to stop him. But the best way to stop him, of course, is to invite him through.
Right. Yes.
Not to fight him, but to invite him through.
It's the same way that Dorne was brought into the realm by Daeron II through peaceful negotiation, not through military.
And like you said, I mean, these people, as they come through the wall, if you were to invite them all through the wall, obviously they could help farm and what have you. But many of them would look for, work, and the Night's Watch is a great choice for them. Maybe you could have seasonal Night's Watch. We have the winter members of the Night's Watch. In the summer, we go back north of the wall.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's just got to be some. They should at least try some sort of negotiation, I would think. But but where you're getting this from, this idea of breaking it, is because Qhorin Halfhand says, "Oh, they're not going over or under; they're going to go through it," and that's why they're in the Frostfangs, because they're looking for some magical thing that will allow them to get through the wall. But that's possible. I mean, that's what seems to be the intel he's getting. But I'm just not sure why you would bring everyone, your women, children, livestock, to search for this magical item. Because Mormont says, I thought they were just gathering to get out of the sight of the Night's Watch, which makes more sense than maybe it's a little of both. They're gathering out of the eyes of the Night's Watch.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. And maybe the magical thing is actually just knowledge. Maybe they're pooling the knowledge. You know, maybe between them they already have what they need. They just need to pool that knowledge. And
could be. You know what they say, and knowledge is power.
Right. And the other thing is, let's assume it is some magical device, you know, the magical hand grenade of Antioch that blows the wall. Having everyone together at that moment is probably a good idea, because the thing is, when you do create a hole in the wall, you got to get through quickly, because you imagine the Night's Watch would be like, "Did you hear that?" We should probably go and investigate.
I felt some rumbling off to the west.
Was that a third horn, or was that a short one?
Yeah. Now, so Qhorin says that he's searching for something, and we did last John chapter find that a ranger or some brother of the Night's Watch hid some things, but it does seem hard to wrap your head around that they would be looking for a cracked and broken warhorn and a few handfuls of dragonglass weapons. That's the object of desire that they seek. But
you think that the horn might be sort of like Battle of Jericho, sort of biblical thing?
Well, I'm just saying they're searching and someone hid something. But certainly at first glance, it doesn't seem like those things would in any way be useful for what they want. We know Lewin has a handy collection of dragon glass arrowheads and stuff. So unless that's somehow going to get him through the wall, I don't know.
Imagine if dragon glass horns would break the wall. You'd got to imagine that Bran the Builder would have been like, "And whatever you do,
do not make a horn out of dragon glass." So, but yeah,
this is indestructible with one minor flaw.
Yeah, everyone's got to have that self-destruct button somewhere around, I guess.
So Qhorin's proposal is for 3 groups of 15 men to take the 3 passes into the Frostfangs: the Milkwater, the Skirling Pass, and the Giant Stairs. Jarman Bookwell will be the leader of the scouts. Will take 1, Thorin Smallwood another, and Qhorin himself the 3rd. Mormont's loath to risk that many men, and then Qhorin is a pretty tough guy. He says, "The men of the Night's Watch can only die for the realm. Why else wear black cloaks?" Which is it's pretty brave and pretty sort of like, tough talk, but it's also kind of like kind of casual with people's lives, if you ask me.
That's the other side of the coin there. Yeah, he definitely comes off as a pretty bad man. He's tough. He seems tough as nails. He's already shown that he can successfully lead men through battle. He just had a 3-1 victory against Alfin Crowkiller and his men. We don't know the circumstances. That there might have only been like Alfin Crowkiller might have had like 10 men. So
yeah.
But
you imagine Qhorin after the battle is turning to his own men. He's saying 3-1, 3-1.
Those are the stats we're going with. But he then says, if we die, it gives time for the brothers south of the wall to prepare for battle, which to me seems a bit like flawed logic, because it'd be a heck of a lot easier to prepare for battle with 300 of the best fighters in the Night's Watch, not just, if we all die, at least the scrubs left back on the other side of the wall can know that they're coming.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're in that whole, what are they doing here?
Right.
but now I'm worried because this whole magical thing. Now I'm worried because that wall cannot afford to fall. The realm needs this wall at this moment. So,
right.
I do understand sending scouting parties into the Frostfangs to find out.
Absolutely.
Maybe you find something critical and you can report back, or you can stop it somehow.
Absolutely. Now, yes, sending scouting parties, I'm totally on board with. Finding out what they're searching for, that there's definitely some sense there. The other 200 men just sitting on the Fist of the First Men waiting to see if Mance Rayder's going to come out of the Frostfangs with 10,000 people might not be necessary. But,
yeah,
But you're right. They do need, if he has some magical way, which is a little bit surprising that these men of the Night's Watch buy this idea of a magical way to break through the wall.
They saw the dead rise, Mackelly. Let me remind you.
You're right. They did.
The first time I see the dead rise, I will stop being such a skeptic about all kinds of things.
Good point.
All right. Do you have any background information?
I do have some background information. So, Mormont and Qhorin Halfhand discuss...
I'm going to interject pedantry during this background, by the way.
Oh,
just FYI.
Okay.
I got pedantry all over this chapter.
You do. So, Mormont and Qhorin Halfhand discuss the Night's Watch castles that can be manned to help prevent the wildlings from getting past the wall. And Jon points out here in this chapter that the Night's Watch have a bunch of unused castles. There's actually 19 in total, and only 17 have ever been manned at once, and these days only 3 are occupied: Eastwatch by the Sea, Castle Black, and the Shadow Tower. Now, the castles mentioned in this chapter as possibilities for reoccupying are Greyguard, Stone Door, Long Barrow, Ice Mark, and Deep Lake. Mormont first considers Greyguard. It's the 4th westernmost stronghold, with a castle named Sentinel Stand between it and the Shadow Tower, and then only Westwatch by the Bridge is further west than the Shadow Tower. Qhorin says Greyguard is mostly collapsed and proposes Stone Door as a better option. Stone Door is next in the line of procession east from Greyguard, so that makes some sense. And then east beyond Stone Door is Hoarfrost Hill, and it must not be in great shape either, because Qhorin also mentions Ice Mark and Deep Lake as possibilities, but never mentions Hoarfrost Hill, and they're both further east than Hoarfrost Hill is. He also doesn't mention the Night Fort, which lies between Ice Mark and Deep Lake. And possibly that's because it's so huge and was originally abandoned due to general maintenance costs, so maybe he figures, no point in even trying to get that one back up and running. Now, all of these that I've mentioned so far have been west of Castle Black, between it and the Shadow Tower. Long Barrow gets a mention, and it's on the east side of Castle Black. It's maybe slightly past halfway if you were traveling from Castle Black to Eastwatch by the Sea, and it's between 2 castles called Rhymegate on the western side and the Torches on the eastern side.
Okay, it's Long Barrow. Long Barrow is my pedantry here. Where the Mance Rayder's army is.
They're in the Frostfangs, right?
They're in the westernmost part of this. You don't have to go manning an eastern castle. It doesn't make any sense. You'd be much better off running rangers sort of north-south from Castle Black to see if they try to head east.
Sure.
Soon as one of them says, "Hey, I saw an army of like 200,000 people heading east," then you think, "All right, let's move those people we just manned the western castles east." But don't man the eastern tower now. That makes no sense.
That's a solid point. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But
it would take far fewer men to do that ranging to keep an eye on it than it would to man the tower.
Absolutely.
To man the castle.
And you would think, traveling with a group that large, you would notice movement.
Right. I mean, how do you sneak past? I mean, obviously they could go way north of the wall and not be seen, but I mean, it wouldn't be hard to keep an, if you walked along, we've had this discussion before, if you walked along and a couple of 100,000 people had just walked across your path, you'd notice.
There'd be signs. Telltale signs.
The back row of the 200,000 have got like twigs and they're sort of covering all of these footprints. Come on. Covering the mammoth footprints.
Yeah, that was a good pedantry, and we're not even to pedantry yet.
I know. We're at comparison with the television show. So Qhorin arrives at the Fist of the First Men. He has not been in a fight and doesn't have that same recent intel. The wildlings where they are is closer to the Shadow Tower than it is to Castle Black, as we've been trying to sort of indicate. So he already knew where Mance was gathering. There's no discussion about how the wildlings are going to get through the wall, nor any quest for something magical to destroy the wall. The bigger concern is that Mance is revealing their tactics and weaknesses, and that might help the wildlings succeed, sort of like he knows where the weak points are.
Right.
The reason for the small parties heading into the Frostfangs is to enter Mance's camp and murder the man himself. That's kind of the strategic idea here, because Qhorin's convinced that if the wildling armies would then fall apart without Mance. The raiding force has to be small to get in. Like from the Fist of the First Men, they can see fires in the Frostfangs, which are the lookouts. So if they came in force, they would be spotted straight away.
Right.
But a small group might be able to get in there.
Yeah, Thorin Smallwood.
Yeah. Qhorin does not recognize Jon. Jon asks to be part of Qhorin's party, heading into the Frostfangs, and Qhorin agrees because Jon killed the White. That's why he agrees. He doesn't know Jon Snow as a Stark, but knowing that he killed the White makes him think he'd be a good person to have on his team.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I like Qhorin picking Jon better than Jon volunteering. I like the way the book's done it. Because
I see. Yeah.
It just I like that Jon isn't like over eager, like, yeah, pick me, like he was early on in this story. He's a more seasoned vet now.
Ghost doesn't appear anywhere in the scene, and Qhorin doesn't talk about Ghost. I mean, they don't show the direwolf unless they have to.
Right, yes.
He's a CGI cost.
Yeah.
So Pedantry Corner, here's my thing about all this.
Yes, you mentioned that I had I misspoke in the summary.
Yes, in the summary. So Mackelly wrote the summary this week. We take turns. Usually it's Mackelly because I'm lazy. And it was slightly misleading what you said, because you made it sound like it was a sentry on the Fist of the First Men who blew the horn, having seen something.
You know why I said that? Because that's what I thought happened. So.
Right. But I don't believe that that's the case. I believe that the horn was sounded by Qhorin Halfhand's men. Because there's one sentence that gives this away. I mean, and it could be either, right? I mean, that's the point. It could be a sentry seeing the men, announcing, I see something. Or it could be the arriving party announcing that they're arriving. Either way makes sense. But Jon says that it was on the edge of hearing. And it feels like if you're on top of the Fist of the First Men, it would not be on the edge of hearing. You would annoy everyone and wake everybody up by blasting your horn.
Unless you're a really sound sleeper.
Right.
It could have just been on the edge of hearing.
So I think it was Qhorin's men blasting the horn.
Okay.
Which makes me think, why were you even slightly nervous that there would be a second horn? Because if it's wildlings, why are they using your semaphore to announce that they're coming? I mean, Mance Rayder was a member of the Night's Watch. He knows the rules. Maybe he's like, a stickler. When we attack, I want you to blast the horn twice so they know you're coming.
Totally fair. Maybe he figures it's like a sports team, like how they would change their cadence or hand signals if they've got a player from their team on the opposing team.
Oh, clever. So the one thing I will say, there is the possibility that Qhorin, or one of Qhorin's men, was running for his life ahead of a huge army of wildlings, and he might have blasted the horn twice.
Right, yes.
Right.
Sure. Okay.
But I will say to that, that's a waste of time. If you're within earshot of the Fist of the First Men when you blast the horn and you've got wildlings on your tail, the people on the Fist of the First Men will see that army of wildlings chasing you fairly soon. You don't have to announce it, because by announcing it, you also announce to the army of wildlings chasing you exactly where you are,
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
And literally, one blast would be enough, because it would alert everyone, hey, did you hear that? Let's look out. And you'd be like, oh, it is a member of the Night's Watch. He probably should have blasted a second blast because there's an army behind him,
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, there was never going to be a second blast, and they should have all relaxed.
I was just thinking about this while you were talking. Could it be that the sentry for the Castle Black group on the Fist of the First Men are further out, not on the top of the hill? You know, that they're out there, so their blast was further away. You know, that's
okay. Yes, I'll give you that. But all right, so when did they blast? As soon as they saw someone coming over the hill, they were like, and then they wait, and they're like, wait a second. I guess those are members of the Night's Watch. I don't know. It just feels like, first of all, you need to not be on the edge of hearing. I mean, I guess the edge of hearing is where you need to be, but you need to be slightly within the edge of hearing. Right. Otherwise, your blasting the horn's not going to do any good to anyone.
Yeah, especially since there's probably a lot of older, not so healthy men of the Night's Watch whose hearing is not so great.
What was that again?
Was that a blast? Or did you have gas?
Okay, so anyway, that's my pedantry on this one. I think I've got a point. I really do.
I do too.
Okay. News and notes.
And I think the moral of that story is I need to read the 8 times through a chapter more closely.
It was difficult to parse. It was not easy, but it was that on the edge of hearing made me think, well, it's Qhorin's men that are blasting the horn. But you are not wrong. It could be a scout out in the field, but honestly, why send people down? You've got the vantage point.
Right.
That's where you put your lookouts.
That was what was preventing me from saying my idea there, is because then they'd be down in the forest and they would not have a very good vantage point.
I tell you what, the other problem with this whole system is, right? So you've got your lookouts looking, right? So you got Johnny and Fred. They're sitting on the thing looking out, okay? Right. And they're like, wait, can you see? Is that... but they're separate. They're not standing next to each other. They're like 50 yards apart along the, perimeter.
I know where you're going with this.
Johnny goes, and Fred just a second later goes, everyone's like,
tear the Shadow Tower men to pieces.
Exactly. It's a terrible scheme.
They gotta just give one guy a horde.
Yeah.
The other guy has to blow a different horn to alert him that he needs a horn.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a quieter horn. I need the horn.
Oh man!
And then, like the urgency of the horn. He has a code for that. Like, I need a horn. Stat.
Oh, we make ourselves laugh.
We do. So news and notes.
News and notes. Well, basically the news and the notes are that our GOH shirt sales are coming along. We're getting some sales of our shirts. So far, there's only t-shirts out there, but we're working on some other stuff. I've been showing Simon some design options for sweatshirts and things of that nature. But just a reminder that our merchandise store is out there. It's ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, and the link will be in the show notes of this episode. I'm working on backfilling all of the previous episodes, but if you're listening to this one, just go to the show notes. There's a link to it in there. There's also a link to all of our other stuff as well. But go check it out. See what you think. Hey, it sounds like a really great holiday gift option for your friends and family.
Mm-hmm. We got a review from Apple Podcasts, Scubas in Pink, which I like that name. Love it. My new favourite podcast. Thank you.
Hey,
short and to the point.
That's right.
We love it too.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Scubas in Pink.
Thank you very much.
All right. In conclusion, really they should stop this ranging. Let's send Qhorin's 3 parties of 15 into the Frostfangs. That makes sense. But then let's hightail the rest of them out of here. Although I have to say, if any of these 45 were to come back, they might only get as far as the Fist of the First Men. So you may need to leave a small garrison here to perhaps send a crow back to Castle Black with the news.
Sure. I could see that. I mean, I'm not saying just abandon these 15 men and be like, okay, we're out of here. But maybe you start the process.
Sorry, did I get the numbers wrong? Was it 3 groups of 15 or
Yeah, no, you're right. 3 groups of 15.
3 groups of 15, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Mormont, he says it would take a month to build a stair or a ramp or something, which I would be very interested in seeing how that works out. And that it would take a year to cut through the wall without some sort of magical device helping. But it would be just about impossible to do any of those things if Brothers of the Night's Watch were standing on top of the wall, dropping stuff down on them. Now, you wouldn't want to drop boiled oil
that
or
would
anything
just help.
like that. Yes, that would only be helping their cause, but there's plenty of other things that you could do to deter them from 700 feet up. And there's not a whole lot that they could do to stop you, because you'd be very hard-pressed to accurately shoot an arrow 700 feet up without fear of it coming right back down on your own people. So
good point.
It just seems like there's, especially with your pedantry about not needing to put much focus on the eastern side of the wall at this point.
Right.
It seems like bring most of these 300 men back and, man a couple of the castles in between the Shadow Tower and Castle Black and run rotations through them. And, that should be enough to prevent, because what could happen, they could sneak the wildlings could sneak a party over, a party of 20 over, and they could possibly take out a garrison of one of the other castles. And then, if they're not running regular rotations, then that might give time for more people to get over. But if you're running rotations on the regular, that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. We understand Mormont's desire, the curiosity to find out what's happening, but, we know where the attack is coming. It's not like they're going to march north.
Right.
They're coming south.
Yes. And Mormont said the original plan of this ranging was to find out what's going on north of the wall. He also mentioned finding out what happened to Benjen Stark, but I think even he and Jon are starting to give up on that hope.
Right.
But hey, maybe Jon is about to get that grand adventure he's always been wanting. The whole reason he wanted to go to the Night's Watch in the first place. Yep.
Qhorin did say they were likely to die on this trip, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure Jon's making a great decision going along, but
teens will be teens.
Yes. But the good news is he is a point of view character, and we know that they are safe. There's nothing could possibly go. Oh wait.
I was just about to agree with you, and then I was recalling an issue back in King's Landing with a certain.
It was an Arya chapter, as I remember.
It was, yes. She survived.
She did. So why is Mance in the Frostfangs with all these people? So they're definitely assembling out of view of the Night's Watch, but are they also looking for some magical way to get through the wall?
Right.
But actually, the way you just described it to me was like probably better than. And again, I don't think Mance will want to destroy the wall, because I think he wants to get away from the others too.
You make a good point.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like the idea of a army, a small group of grappling hook soldiers climbing the wall, assassinating everybody on the wall in that point, climbing back down the other side and opening the gate. And then everyone piles through as quick as they can.
That's why they need these 300 men back, so that they can start running regular.
Right. To stop these people from saving themselves.
Well, then that's the whole moralistic issue here, isn't it? Why are they sentencing? They know there's others on the other side, and they know that they're stirring. They're sentencing these people to either death or to add to the force of the
both.
Or both, yes. Like if you're one, you're the other, I guess, in this situation.
All right. As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at ghostharrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord.
And don't forget our merchandise store. And if you wouldn't mind going out and please leaving us a 5-star rate and or a glowing review, it really means so much to us, and it really helps us out a lot. And basically, we just really appreciate it. And if you do go out and leave us a 5-star rate and a glowing review, we will certainly do our best to read it in a future episode.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.